What is up, everybody? Sean Sheehan back here with another edition of the Sheehan Show betting show. And you're probably wondering, like, how's this lad doing a betting show? But there's no fights this weekend. But what I'm doing is something a little bit special, a little bit different. I'm going to look at the bets for next year, and I'm not going to look at the upcoming events. I know there's some upcoming events in January and February and stuff like that. But you usually see on your favorite betting website, our best fight odds as I'm looking at here, there is a section for future bets. So fights that might happen, that are kind of, people are looking at down the line this year. And there are betting odds up for it, and you can bet for them. So I'm going to look at some of those fights, talk a little bit through them, think like, right, first of all, we look to see if the fight will actually happen. If the fight does happen, what the odds are like. Most of the odds here are just straight up to win. So that's what we'll mostly be looking at. And let's see if there's some good prices or some, possible winners there. A lot of these fights are like speculative fights, like, it's Abdu Rozik versus the other lad, or Hasbulla, the other lad, Hasbulla. But fights that probably will never happen, maybe, who knows. But that we can look at anyway and see if they do happen, how will it go? So, as I said, always bet responsibly as well. These are the sort of fun ones. These are like, I'm sure people over, in America watching the NFL or the baseball or something, you have, a bet at the start of the year. I was betting my beloved Manchester United to, I'm not going to lie because I know they're not going to win, but I usually bet on someone to be top scorer in the Premier League from Man United or something like that. And they let me down. So maybe this is kind of the MMA version of that. Have a quick bet for the year. I think most places, if it doesn't happen within a certain time frame, let's say the first one up here, McGregor versus Usman. If that fight doesn't happen, hopefully you'll get your money back. Look, make sure as well, bet responsibly. Make sure you look at your bookmakers wherever you're betting and see if that is a thing. So if that is, these are kind of a shot in the dark. Sometimes will it happen, won't it happen? So let's get into them. And I'm just going to run through all the ones they have here. There's maybe 10 or 15 bets they have here. And the funny, the Abdu was actually there. I just noticed as I went down. But let's start with that McGregor versus Usman one. So the lineup here is plus 450 for Conor McGregor, Kamaru Usman minus 700. Now, will this fight happen, first of all? Is there a world you could see McGregor fighting Usman? Like, if he did fight him, would it be for the title? I can't see it, to be honest. Not in the very near future anyway. Like, I think if Conor McGregor comes back, right, and he gets back into a role where he's winning fights, if he's won 3 or 4 fights in a row, I could absolutely see this happening. Because Conor McGregor's not a guy who takes a backward step. He's a guy that goes forward, goes upwards, takes the hardest, matches possible. If you're the biggest Conor McGregor hater in the world, or if you're his biggest fan, I don't think there's anyone that could disagree with that. He went up and weight and fought Eddie Alvarez, fought Mayweather, fought Khabib, Nurmagomedov. There's just no doubting that, I don't think. So if he did get into that role of winning fights in a row at lightweight, could he go up to welterweight and challenge there? Yeah, I think he actually probably would. The hardest part of that, though, is winning all those fights at lightweight. Because if he comes back, let's say he has someone like Tony Ferguson is the fight I would love to see. Let's say he has that, and I have a whole other podcast as well. I don't know if it's out yet or will be coming out on Sherdog as well, talking about Conor McGregor and what I think should be next for him. So if he can go in that role, absolutely. But it's very hard to see that. And I also think it's very hard to see that happening, as well as Usman maybe holding the title for that long. Now, Usman is very, very good, and it's hard to see anyone beating him at the moment, but MMA is a wild landscape. We saw what happened with Amanda Nunes, and we've seen what's happened down through the years for everyone. So, do I think that fight will happen? No, I don't. I can't see it happening in the very near future anyway. And the plus 450 for McGregor, minus 700 for Usman, I think that's probably just about right. Yeah, so I would avoid that one. Next fight here is a fight that's very possible, actually. Amanda Nunes versus Kayla Harrison. Nunes minus 240, Kayla Harrison plus 205. Now, that's a line I would have looked at a couple of weeks ago and thought, yeah, that's probably right. But then Julianna Pena came along and she changed the world. I remember tweeting, I was like, look, Julianna Pena wins this fight, she's going to change the world. And she did. She's changing what I'm talking about right now and the way I look at that fight. I think Kayla Harrison plus 205 there is a great bet. Do I think this fight will happen? I do think it'll happen. In the next year, yeah, I think it will. No, it all depends. Look, it depends on two things, really. will Nunes beat Pena in the rematch if the rematch happens? One. And two, will Kayla Harrison sign for the UFC? Because that's not a guarantee, I don't think yet. No, maybe by the time this comes out, she might have signed for the UFC. But I still think there's a possibility she goes to Bellator. I still think there's a possibility she signs back for PFL for another year, just because of the Nunes loss, basically. And that if if her plan was to come in, get a big money offer to fight Nunes, well, if the Nunes fight is no longer there, that money is probably off the table. But it could quickly come back on the table if Nunes was to win the rematch. So if I was Kayla Harrison, I would wait out. I would wait for that Nunes rematch, hope that Nunes takes it as quick as possible, and try to get my way back in. Now, does she go back and try to earn another £1 million in PFL in the meantime? How long is that going to take? That's probably going to take another 8 or 9 months to all work out. So that's a tough thing to do, and maybe it's the move at this stage, but I suppose we will see on that one. But I do think this fight will happen. Whether it happens in the next year or not, I don't know. And Kayla Harrison plus 205, I don't think that price is going to get better somehow. Although, maybe if Nunes comes back and wins, it will get better. So maybe it is one where you hold off. But I like that price. I think that's good right now. Next one again is an alternative to that. It's Cris Cyborg against Kayla Harrison. And that's plus 170 for Kayla, minus 200 for Cris Cyborg. So Kayla Harrison is closer to Cyborg in that one. Still an underdog though, which is very, very interesting because look, if it's the question again, who does she sign for? Bellator, PFL, UFC? If she does sign for Bellator, you would think they will throw her straight into that matchup. So it's a very possible matchup to happen next. It's I would say it's still. I wouldn't say it's 50-50 because Dana White doesn't talk about people like that unless he's really wanting to sign them. The Amanda Nunes situation obviously changed everything, but I think it's Dana White's not the type of guy to go back at it and to let a woman he's talked up as a really fantastic fighter go to a Bellator. So if it happens, I think that's good money on Kayla Harrison as well. I'd definitely pick her to win that fight against Cyborg, I think. I don't know what the Nunes fight. I'd probably lean with Nunes to that. But I just think Cyborg against someone like with the grappling chops of Kayla Harrison would have a big, big, big issue. And I think Kayla Harrison would probably end up getting inside, taking her down, and probably winning that fight. So I think plus 170 is a good bet, but will the fight happen? That's the biggest thing. So if you can get that price, take it, as long as your bookmaker will give the money back if the fight doesn't happen. All right, next one. Israel Adesanya versus Jared Cannonier, minus 300. Adesanya, Cannonier, plus 250. Now, obviously, Israel is fighting against Robert Knuckles, I almost called him there, Robert Whittaker. So this kind of goes along the lines of that Israel Adesanya will beat Robert Whittaker and fight Jared Cannonier next. Now, I don't think that's at all a guarantee. I think Robert Whittaker has a massive chance in the next fight. I don't think he fought to his utmost in the last fight at all. And I think this one will be a much closer, tightly run affair, to be honest. So, this fight could happen anyway. Maybe Whittaker ends up fighting Cannonier if he wins it, but maybe he ends up fighting someone else, and Cannonier ends up fighting Adesanya. But if the fight does happen, if Adesanya wins, if Cannonier, I don't know if he's fighting anyone, but if he wins or if he does end up being the next guy for Adesanya, I think that line is a little bit close, to be honest. I would probably have Adesanya a little bit of a bigger favourite, minus 300. Okay, you're a 3-1 on favourite. But I think he should be a bigger favourite against Jared Cannonier. I think guys like Cannonier, who are, he's a good, well-rounded fighter with power and stuff. I think Adesanya kind of deals with guys like that. I think it's technicians that Adesanya has a bigger issue with. Someone like a Blachowicz, who he has power and all that, but he's a very good technical fighter, a very good tactical fighter as well, and I think that's the biggest problem for Adesanya. I don't think Cannonier really is that, and that's why I think he could have a bigger problem as well with Whittaker the next time. Okay, he's not the most technical fighter either, but I think his tactics might be better next time. So we'll wait on that and we'll wait and see. Right, next fight is a fight I do think will happen in the next year, and that's Kamaru Usman versus Khamzat Chimaev. Usman minus 185, Chimaev plus 160. Now, that is a crazy line to think of it, just as someone who, like Chimaev, who's fought one guy in the top 15, and the rest of the people, you know, I have great respect for Rhys McKee. He's a very good fighter, but his first UFC fight on a week's notice. He fought John Phillips, who is, you know, a very good boxer, but not the best takedown guy in the world, you know, not the best on the ground. And then he fought Mershart, great knockout as well, and Zhang Yang, a fantastic win. Look, we can see how good people are. If you can't see how good Chimaev is, you probably don't know much about MMA, you're blind. But we also should see how good Usman is. Now, I haven't said that. haven't said that. I don't think that line is too far off. I think that's just about right. I think Usman should be favoured, but not much of a favourite. Chimaev is a different sort of beast. This guy is an absolute animal of a fighter. He is brilliant all around in every way. His wrestling is absolutely fantastic. And I think that line is just about right. I probably wouldn't bet on either of them at that line because I don't know who's going to win it. Maybe because I don't know who's going to win it, the guy who's the underdog should be the one you bet on. Chimaev at minus or at plus 160. That's that would just be a brilliant fight, and I really, really hope that happens in the next while. You know, I would do it next. I know poor Leon Edwards probably will kill me if he listens to this. Look, Leon deserves a shot, and if he is the next one at Usman, there's no problem at all with that. But I need Chimaev versus Usman next year. That is the fight. That is one of the best fights you can make in the UFC right now, so we need to see that. We really, really do. Next one up here, Nathan Diaz plus 120 against Tony Ferguson minus 140. Look, it looks like Nate Diaz is on the last fight of his contract, and that the UFC are trying to get him a Chimaev or trying to get him a Poirier, or someone that's a very, very tough matchup for him. Nate Diaz doesn't seem to be budging at the moment, but we will see, I suppose, how that goes and what happens. A Tony Ferguson fight, look, it's a very winnable fight for both guys. It's perfect matchmaking. McGregor versus Ferguson actually is the next one as well, and I think that's perfect matchmaking too. But I think, look, it's very hard to gauge where Tony Ferguson is at the moment compared to, say, a McGregor and a Diaz, because he's been fighting at the very, very top kind of up-and-coming guys like the Beneil Dariush's and stuff who are, you know, hell-bent on getting towards the title. And he obviously isn't there anymore. You know, he's not at that level. I don't think he was ever at that level, to be honest. I think he would always have struggled against the Khabib or a McGregor or someone like that, who the people at the very top. But he's definitely no longer at his top ebb. Either is Nate Diaz, we all know that. But I kind of struggle to see where that line goes. I feel like they just have it about right. Tony Ferguson as the slight favourite. Look, the McGregor one, Tony Ferguson plus 250, McGregor minus 300. I think that's about right. Yeah, I think, look, the problem with McGregor is he broke his leg. And I think if McGregor, look, the last couple of fights we saw against Poirier, okay, Poirier was the better fighter in the majority of both of those fights. But McGregor didn't look like he was shot in those fights. He looked like he wasn't as good maybe as he once was, but he was fighting arguably the best lightweight of the world at the time. Okay, Charles Oliveira has proven that not to be true now. But if you took him down a step, you would think he would win fights. I think most people would agree with that. Tony Ferguson is probably that step down the way he's been fighting at the moment, the last while. So I think McGregor minus 300 against Tony Ferguson plus 250 is a good line, but it's also a line that if you trust Tony Ferguson to get motivated and get in shape for a McGregor fight, that plus 250 is suddenly a very good price because of McGregor's injury. So it's not one I would put people off betting on at all. But there's a lot of ifs, ands, and buts in that. Will the fight happen, first of all? I think it actually will, maybe, but we will wait and see on that one. Next one, Gilbert Burns versus Khamzat Chimaev. Burns plus 250, Chimaev minus 300. Like, if the Leon Edwards versus Usman fight happens, I think that fight could happen. Burns seems to want it. Chimaev, I think, would take it. It's a very tough fight for Chimaev, though. I remember I talked to Ingari in an interview before, and we were kind of, looking forward to the best welterweights in the world at the moment. And this was before he actually moved to Sanford MMA, and he was telling me about how he thinks Gilbert Burns is like the scariest guy in that division. And if you think about it, he is thundering striking, brilliant jiu-jitsu, very good wrestling, tough guy, good everywhere. A very, very, very tough matchup for anyone. So if you want to test for Chimaev to see if he is one of the best in the world, well, that's a perfect test. Chimaev, massive favourite, said minus 300, Burns plus 250. That is, that's a fun fight. I would absolutely love to see that. I'd love to see Chimaev fight any of the top guys. I think that's something we really need to see in the next year, and we will see it. I think we will see it. So, very, very interesting on that one. A fight actually I just saw before I saw this, that Dana White said he would make this fight if he could. Dustin Poirier versus Nathan Diaz. The sort of fight the UFC want to make. Poirier minus 400, Diaz plus 300. I think Poirier should be a bit of a bigger favourite than that. I don't see a way Nate Diaz wins that fight at all, to be honest. Unless Poirier is completely out of motivation after losing the title fight, and this is kind of the end of his career. Now, I don't think it is. I said on podcasts after the fight that I think Poirier will bounce back. I think he'll have maybe a Bisping run to end his career and keep coming at it, and maybe win the title at some stage. So I don't think that, but that's the only possibility I see for Nate Diaz to win that fight, to be honest. I think that's a very, very good line. Minus 400. Okay, no, it's not the best line in the world. You're not going to become a millionaire off of that. But I think minus 400 on Poirier would definitely be the way I would go there. I wouldn't take plus 300 on Diaz whatsoever in that one. The next one here is Amanda Nunes versus Julianna Pena, which is a fight that looks like it's going to happen. There's two different lines here, and they're very, very different. One line with let me just check who it is. It's BetMGM has Amanda Nunes minus 1,200 and Julianna Pena plus 700. And in the other line, which is just the reference line, it's plus 270 for Pena, minus 330 for Nunes. Now, if that minus 330 was available on Nunes, I think a lot of people would probably be taking it. Look, this is a difficult one to talk about because you have to give respect to Julianna Pena, but you also have to say that Amanda Nunes would be the massive favourite if this fight was to happen again. But it's that question again, like the one with Poirier. Is this a change in Amanda Nunes? Is she the same fighter? Is she too rich? You know, the question we ask with Conor McGregor all the time. Has she too much money in the bank? Is she in those silk sheets? Can she get up at 5 a.m. for those runs anymore? You know, she's a baby now as well. I'm sure there's sleepless nights and everything like that. Same as, you know, McGregor and his family had a baby as well. It's a difficult one. It's a very, very difficult one to see if she comes back. Now, if there's someone she could have lost to and to come back and fight that person again, I think Julianna Pena probably is a matchup she would look at. Although I don't like saying that either, because sometimes we forget. And I looked at an old tweet that I tweeted before, like 6 or 7 years ago, and I was like, 5 years ago maybe. I was like, Julianna Pena is very good. She's an ex-comer. I think she could. It's a 50-50 fight with Nunes. Now, very different Nunes. I'm not some soothsayer or anything like that. Don't get me wrong. But sometimes we forget that Julianna Pena is actually a good fighter. You know, she's tough, durable, has good takedowns, good wrestling, and as she showed, she can land a jab in that fight as well. So you couldn't rule her out. But I'm kind of half ruling her out anyway. I think Amanda Nunes will win that. This line, I feel like the minus 300 line is, I feel like it's a bit small. Minus 1,200 may be a bit big, so I would probably avoid that one for a while. Right. Next few fights here. Charles Oliveira, Justin Gaethje. A fight that looks like it's going to happen. Oliveira minus 170, Gaethje plus 145. I'd be all over Oliveira and that. And there's no lines up yet, but I'll spoiler alert for a betting show in the future. I will be going for Oliveira by submission and that. I just think Justin Gaethje against Khabib showed that his submission game, his jiu-jitsu game is not up to scratch whatsoever. And you can't fight someone like Charles Oliveira and not have a submission game or a defensive submission game anyway that's elite. Justin Gaethje should be probably on the mats right now as we speak. He should be eating his turkey and ham on Christmas Day on the mats, getting prepared for this fight. You know, he is a big, big deficit to make up, and I don't even think he can make it up in that short of time. But we will see it. Minus 170 for Charles Oliveira. That is a line I would be all over. I think that's a great price on Charles Oliveira. Next one here, Tsarukyan versus Joel Alvarez. I think that fight's happening, so we leave that one maybe. But Joel Alvarez plus 310. The last time, if anyone remembers, in a previous betting show, I gave Alvarez at a big plus money. I think he'll win that. Plus 375 for Alvarez. There you go. There's another bet I would put on that. I leave the Kader Chikadze one as well, because that's a fight that's coming up. Kader is plus 175, Chikadze minus 205. That's an interesting line as well. You know, Chikadze kind of the up and comer. So yeah, that's interesting. I think it should be maybe a little bit closer. So yeah. Right, here we go. Here's some fun ones. Going right. Abdu Rozik plus 135. Hasbulla Magomedov minus 165. Now, these lads, who's to say? Look, if this happens, it can't be a real fight, can it? WWE would probably be the place for this, or somewhere else. I don't know. Those Russians are bad lads. We all know that. It could happen. I would look, if it does happen, it's hardly going to be a real fight, so they're going to fix it for someone to win. And you know, when I say fix, you know, a pro wrestling match or something like that, and you can bet in pro wrestling matches, so there's nothing wrong with that. Hasbulla is the star, like, so they can't let the star lose, can they? Unless they want to do a trilogy, maybe. Yeah, I'd probably go for Hasbulla minus 165 there. This is the breakdown everyone needs. That's turning psychic as well that Hasbulla has. That's legit. I saw him training today. Rocky collage got around and all. Hasbulla is the man. Minus 165. I'm all over that. Hasbulla has it. Right, the last few here. Jan Blachowicz versus Jiri Prochazka plus 155. Or 115, sorry. Plus 115 for Blachowicz. Minus 135 for Prochazka. Well, it's Blachowicz. You know, that's a bit of a weird one now, because Blachowicz is not the champion anymore. It's Glover Teixeira, so it's going to be Glover. So that's a possible fight that could happen down the line. Blachowicz is fighting Rakic coming up soon, so that's not a guaranteed win. Prochazka against Glover's not a guaranteed win either. So, you know, if both win, it could happen. If both lose, it could happen. So maybe it is a fight that could happen. I think that line is just about right. I think Prochazka would win that. So yeah, just about right. Chimaev versus Edwards in minus 275 plus 235 for Edwards. Chimaev obviously the favourite at minus 275. I think that's about right as well. I think if that fight happens, like if Leon Edwards goes in there and beats Usman, that is the fight that will happen. So, you know, it's probably not 50-50, because I think Usman will win the fight against Edwards if that does happen. But there's a high possibility that fight happens, you know. And maybe even if there's an injury or some other fight happens, you could see that fight happen. So it's definitely a fight I wouldn't rule out happening. I think Chimaev is minus 275. I think that's a good price, to be honest. I think he'd beat Leon Edwards pretty handily, so that's an interesting one. Masvidal versus Diaz minus 325 for Masvidal, plus 275 for Diaz. Obviously we saw that fight before and Masvidal kind of took him apart, but that was Masvidal in his kind of highest ebb. I don't think he's there anymore. Look, Diaz isn't either, we all know that. But I think that's I think that's right as well. I probably have Masvidal a bit of a bigger favourite even, but minus 375 is pretty good. Adesanya versus Jones, minus 115 for Adesanya. Jones, minus 105. So Adesanya is the favourite in that? Adesanya is the favourite to beat John Jones. Not a hope in hell. John Jones wins that fight every day of the week and twice on Sunday. I don't think it'll happen. I don't think it's a fight that's going to happen. Unless Adesanya wins a few middleweight and moves up again. But even then, John Jones looks like he's moving to heavyweight. So yeah, I don't think that's a fight that's going to happen. But, you know, we will see. But I would definitely be backing John Jones. If you feel like that fight's going to happen and you want to back someone, John Jones minus 105, definitely. I love that price on John Jones. Dustin Poirier, Khabib Nurmagomedov, that's a fight definitely not going to happen. Plus 385 for Poirier, minus 500 for Nurmagomedov, and that's going to happen. Poirier versus Chandler, I could see that. Minus 175 for Poirier. Chandler, plus 150. I would give a higher price there for Poirier. I think that's a good price on Poirier, minus 175. Yeah, I think he'll win that one, and I think that would be a very, very good price for Dustin Poirier. So yeah, no price here on John Jones at heavyweight or anything like that. I was hoping there'd be one of them, but no, alas. I think Jones, if he does go in there against one of the heavyweights, obviously was something we will talk about in the future. I think he'd probably be an underdog. If he's an underdog here against Adesanya, I think he'll definitely be an underdog against, definitely Ngannou if he was to win. But Ganya, oh my God, that's the fight I want to see. But anyway, I think that one might be more even maybe, but very interesting as we go forward. So yeah, some interesting things there. Let me know what bet you're going to be betting on next year. As I said, the Joel Alvarez one is what I would definitely look at. I think if Kayla Harrison signs for Bellator. I think that's a very good price on her to beat Cris Cyborg. And Conor McGregor as well, Tony Ferguson. I think that fight will happen. Minus 300, not a bad price there at all. So, yeah, those are my bets for 2022, or those are the bets for 2022. Let me know what you're betting on, as I said. And yeah, we will leave it there. We're back in the new year with more betting shows as the events get back. I really enjoy doing them, and I really enjoy getting my bets right as well. I got a lot of them wrong, but some of them right as well. And it's been very, very fun. I leave it there. Thanks everyone for watching. My name is Sean Sheehan for Sherdog.com. I'll see you all next time.